There are a small number of credible reports of rather large Sasquatches being up in trees. They have the shoulders, the hands, the arms. They're strong. They can pull themselves up. The Sasquatches are just better built humans, way more apey than we are, and we're apes.
Everyone says they want to see Bigfoot until they do. In December 1981, a Louisiana hunter named Mike Wooley didn't just see one. He came back with a story so detailed, so terrifying, it's impossible to ignore. What started as a normal day in the woods turned into the kind of encounter most people pray they never have. This is Mike's story, exactly as he told it. Mike Wooley was deep in the Louisiana wilderness near the woods of Kiachi. It was a cold, crisp December day with temperatures around 30 degrees, and the sky was clear, perfect hunting weather. As an experienced outdoorsman, Mike knew every logging road, every bend in the forest, and every place deer like to move. He set off that day for a routine deer hunt, driving partway down an old logging road and then walking the rest. His stand was a wooden structure perched about 10 feet off the ground, located roughly 1.5 miles off the main highway.
My name is Mike Wooley. I'm from Kiachi, Louisiana. I had an encounter back in December of 1981 with a Bigfoot while deer hunting. It was a beautiful December day, perfect weather for a hunt.
He climbed into his stand and settled in with his rifle, facing north. For the first 30 minutes, everything was normal. The woods were quiet, maybe too quiet. The occasional rustle of leaves and distant bird calls were all that broke the silence. Then something changed. The doe in distress. The stillness of the forest was shattered when the underbrush to the east exploded with noise. A young doe burst out of the thicket, running at full speed. This wasn't a calm grazing animal. This deer was in a full panic. Her flanks were dragging, and her coat was drenched with sweat. She looked like she was running for her life. Mike was stunned. The terrain she came through was so dense that even a man with a machete would have struggled to push through. But this doe had somehow forced her way out. She didn't stop until she reached the base of Mike's stand. Then she collapsed. Right there, pressing herself tightly against the wooden frame as if she were trying to hide or seek protection. Mike's first instinct? A big buck must have been chasing her. That's every hunter's dream, a buck in hot pursuit. He raised his rifle and got ready. As Mike scanned the woods looking for movement, something else caught his attention. To his left, about 20 yards away, partly obscured by a tree, stood a figure, massive, easily 7 to 8 feet tall. It wasn't a deer, and it definitely wasn't a buck. The creature's entire body was covered in thick, dark hair that shimmered slightly in the sunlight. Its build was huge, broad shoulders, long limbs, upright stance. It looked something like a gorilla, but also not.
This area of the country has a ton of Bigfoot reports out of it, dating back into the 1800s. I have personally spoken to a dozen or two people that have seen Sasquatches in this area.
There were human elements to its face and posture that stopped Mike cold. At first, he thought it might be a person in a costume, maybe someone trying to scare him off his spot. "Hey, take the head off and get out of here," he yelled. "This isn't funny." But the creature didn't move. It just stared, unblinking, locked onto Mike. Its gaze held something unsettling, a mix of curiosity and something darker. Mike raised his rifle and peered through the high-powered scope. Through the scope, Mike could see every detail. Its breath was visible in the cold air, steady clouds escaping from its nose and mouth. But it was the face that truly rattled him. Thick eyelashes framed deep-set eyes. Its mouth revealed flat, square teeth like a horse's, but scaled up. And the skin on its face? Light brown, like a deep suntan. Its features were almost human, too human. The longer Mike looked, the more he knew this wasn't a costume. This wasn't a prank. This was something real. The roar and the whistle. Then it roared. A guttural, bone-shaking roar that echoed through the trees. It was like a lion's growl mixed with a primal scream. Mike had never heard anything like it. And then, another sound, A whistle, sharp, loud, deliberate. It came from about 100 yards away, northeast of his stand. Immediately, the creature responded with its own whistle. Then it turned its eyes back to Mike. He wasn't dealing with just one of them. That whistle was proof. There were more. Mike wasn't the hunter anymore. He was the one being hunted. Mike gripped his rifle tighter. His mind raced. Was this some kind of feral human? He'd heard stories of people going wild in the woods, living off the grid, dangerous and unpredictable. But nothing about this creature's size or behavior fit that image. And Bigfoot? He'd always dismissed it. Some myth from California. Not something that could be real, let alone stalking the woods of Louisiana. But now, here he was, cornered and completely convinced. Whatever these beings were, they were real. And they were coming for him. The escape. Mike knew he couldn't stay in the deer stand. It wasn't safe anymore. He had to get back to his truck. He leapt from the stand and sprinted west, back toward the logging road. Every step was fueled by fear. And then he heard it, the crashing of brush behind him. He glanced over his shoulder. It was following him, 7 to 8 feet tall, black, hairy, moving like a gorilla on 2 legs, but faster. It barreled through trees like they were nothing. Mike knew it wasn't a gorilla. There was no circus in town, no escaped animal, no explanation. It was hunting him. His truck came into view, but he knew stopping to unlock the door could be fatal.
Their torsos are very barrel-shaped. These are creatures that are evolved to muscle their way through the environment rather than think their way through.
The creature was too close. He had one chance. Mike turned, raised his rifle, and fired at a tree to his left. The bullet struck the trunk about 7 feet high, sending bark flying right into the creature's face. It stopped, just for a second, but that was all Mike needed. He threw himself into the truck, locked the doors, and jammed the keys into the ignition. His hands were shaking, but he managed to start the engine. He floored it. Mike thought he was safe, but then he looked in the rearview mirror. There was another one. Another giant figure stepped out onto the road behind him, just as massive, just as terrifying. It didn't chase him. It just stood there, watching. The two creatures stood side by side, watching as Mike's truck vanished into the distance. The image burned into his memory forever. As Mike drove, trying to put distance between himself and what he'd just escaped, his mind kept circling back to the face. It wasn't just the size or power of the creature that disturbed him. It was how human it looked, not just animalistic features. No, this thing had light brown skin on its face, like a deep suntan. It had a distinct jawline, a real forehead, teeth that were flat and wide, like a person's but massive, eyelashes, deep-set eyes. The details stuck with him, burned into memory. It looked really human, Mike recalled. The face was human. The eyelashes, I could see the eyelashes. The eyes, the teeth. Big, flat teeth like our teeth. Despite everything, the sheer terror, the adrenaline, the sense of being hunted, Mike couldn't shake one feeling. Something told him not to shoot. Something inside said, "This ain't right." Pulling the trigger would have been wrong. Mike knew he had narrowly escaped a deadly encounter. His years of experience in the wilderness hadn't prepared him for this. The place he once saw as peaceful, predictable, he now saw as something else entirely, something that hides secrets far beyond what most people are willing to believe. And if anyone ever found themselves in the same situation, Mike had just one warning. This isn't a fight you can win. Mike had spent his whole life in the woods. He had hunted, tracked, and seen nearly every animal native to Louisiana. But this wasn't an animal. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't a gorilla. And it wasn't a man. It was something else.
There have been cases of Sasquatches going after humans as a food source. One example was written about by Teddy Roosevelt in his book.
And even after making it out alive, Mike couldn't rest. He kept replaying that day over and over again in his mind, trying to make sense of it, trying to fit it into some known category of wildlife, behavior, or survival instinct. But no matter how many times he went back over it, the answer stayed the same. It was real. It wasn't supposed to be, but it was. Mike's story isn't the only one like this. Others have come forward, hunters, hikers, families, sharing detailed, chilling encounters of their own. Encounters that seem eerily similar, huge bipedal creatures with both animal and human traits, vocalizations that don't belong to any known species, wood knocks, whistles, and the feeling, undeniable, that you're being watched. The Alaska Encounter. In the remote wilderness of Alaska, a wildlife researcher and filmmaker named Doug had his own terrifying brush with the unknown. While setting up cameras in the dense forest near Prince of Wales Island, Doug began noticing strange signs. Tree structures, massive branches twisted and locked together, were high above the ground. Too high, too precise to be random. One night, while reviewing footage for his documentary on nocturnal animals, Doug spotted something. A shadowy figure stood at the edge of the clearing. It was enormous, at least 8 feet tall, covered in dark fur. Its eyes glowed faintly in the dim moonlight, reflective and intelligent. Suddenly, the night was filled with deep, guttural growls. Rhythmic, wood-knocking sounds echoed through the trees. Doug described the vocalizations as a deep rumble, something that vibrated through his chest and spine. This wasn't a bear. That footage, and Doug's retelling, was later featured in Expedition Bigfoot. To this day, it remains one of the most compelling modern encounters. Provo Canyon, Utah. In the silent woods of Utah's Provo Canyon, 2 hikers had a moment they'd never forget. While walking along a trail, they saw movement ahead. At first, they thought it was a bear. It was rummaging near a tree. But when they started filming and got closer, the figure rose. It wasn't a bear. It stood on 2 legs, towering, with broad shoulders and long arms like a primate. But the face was humanoid. The hikers froze. What started as curiosity turned to fear when the creature growled. A deep, guttural growl that said one thing: stay away.
There are 7 documented Sasquatch sighting reports from Utah County, which is where Provo, Utah is. There are probably 700 that we've never heard about.
They backed off but managed to keep filming. Later, when they reviewed the footage, it was clear. The way it moved, the fluid gait, the purposeful arm swings. It wasn't clumsy like a bear. It moved like something intelligent. Experts reviewing the clip noted the lack of a snout and the presence of distinctly human-like features. That encounter was featured on The Proof Is Out There and remains one of the clearest recordings ever captured. The Washington Campground Intrusion. In Washington State, a region known for Bigfoot legends, a family's peaceful camping trip turned into a nightmare. It began with distant wood knocks, then sharp whistles. At first, they assumed it was wildlife, maybe other campers. But by morning, the truth was impossible to ignore. Their campsite was surrounded by massive footprints, over 18 inches long, wide, far larger than any human could make. The stride length alone suggested a creature of immense size. That evening, the real fear began. As they sat around the campfire, one family member spotted a silhouette at the tree line. It stepped forward, massive, covered in thick, matted fur, well over 8 feet tall. Its eyes reflected the firelight, glowing, watching. When the father shined a flashlight at it, the creature backed away but let out a roar, low and resonant. The family packed up and fled. The Georgia standoff. In the North Georgia woods, another hunter had a terrifying moment of truth. He had gone out early to scout deer, but as he moved through the trees, he noticed how quiet the forest was. No birds, no movement, just silence. Then he saw it. At first, he thought it was a bear, but as it stepped into the light, he saw the truth. It was on 2 legs, reddish-brown fur, towering height, and a face that stopped him cold. It looked human, deep-set eyes, a heavy brow ridge, expression. He raised his rifle, but not to shoot, just to try and scare it. The creature let out a roar so loud it seemed to shake the ground. Paralyzed with fear, the hunter slowly backed away. Eventually, it turned and walked off into the forest. But the hunter's beliefs were forever changed. The Allegheny Trail camera footage. In 2007, Rick Jacobs set up a trail cam in Pennsylvania's Allegheny National Forest, hoping to capture local wildlife. Instead, what he got was extraordinary. His camera snapped a series of photos of a large, gorilla-like figure. The silhouette was unmistakable: long limbs, upright posture, massive frame.
It's just a very unlikely place to expect an elusive creature like Sasquatch is described as to venture out into the open in the broad of daylight.
Rick submitted the photos to the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, BFRO, which analyzed them in detail. They believed the creature could be a juvenile Sasquatch based on proportions and behavior caught in the frames. Skeptics suggested it was a mangy bear, but even the Pennsylvania Game Commission couldn't explain the posture and movement. To this day, the footage remains one of the most hotly debated pieces of evidence in the Bigfoot community. The Missouri encounter at Table Rock Lake. One of the most chilling recent encounters happened near Table Rock Lake in Missouri. Nathan, a local resident of Branson, grew up exploring the woods near his neighborhood. He and his friends knew the area well: trails, campsites, and even hidden coves along Indian Point. One evening, they headed out to one of their usual spots by the lake. Just for fun, Nathan decided to whistle, something he'd done before. This time, the forest answered back. What they heard was a scream-like growl, inhuman, powerful, and blood-curdling. It sounded like a mix between a woman screaming and a massive predator on the hunt.
There's a retired cryptolinguist from the US Navy. He's realized that there are phonemic patterns that repeat in the sounds. Those are words. Sasquatches might be talking to one another.
Suddenly, the brush behind them exploded with crashing sounds. Something large was moving fast. They were being followed. Nathan and his friends sprinted until they reached the road, only then feeling some sense of safety. But even then, none of them could shake the sense that what they'd heard and what had been following them was no normal animal. Every story leaves behind the same set of clues: the same terrain, deep woods, remote trails, and vast wilderness. The same sounds: wood knocks, whistles, guttural growls. The same features: massive height, upright posture, fur-covered bodies, and disturbingly human faces. And most of all, the same feeling: that undeniable instinctual realization that you are not alone, that you're being watched by something smarter, stronger, and not entirely of this world. For Mike Wooley, that feeling changed everything. A second look at that day. Looking back, Mike recalls every moment in vivid detail. The cold weather, the eerily quiet woods, the panicked doe collapsed against his stand. Then the shadow in the trees, the eyes that locked onto his, the roar that echoed across the forest, and the whistle that followed. It wasn't one creature, it was two, possibly more. Mike realized in that moment that this wasn't some myth passed down through California folklore. It wasn't a joke or a hoax. This was real: the sound of the crashing brush behind him, the sight of that giant form tearing through the woods like it owned the place. That image would never leave Mike's mind. Even more terrifying, knowing that when he looked back from the truck, there was another one standing on the road. They didn't chase him. They didn't need to. They watched, side by side, silent, towering, and they let him leave. Mike had fired only once, a warning shot, and it was just enough. The bark it kicked up hit the creature in the face and made it pause. Had it not, Mike may not have made it out. That split-second decision to fire at the tree instead of the creature saved his life. But the memory of looking into that face, of locking eyes with something that wasn't supposed to exist, that memory stayed. And the longer he thought about it, the more he knew. Something told him, "Don't shoot," It's not the right thing to do. For Mike, the most disturbing detail wasn't the roar, or the sheer size, or even the second creature. It was the face. It had a jawline, eyelashes, teeth like his, eyes that looked back at him. It looked really human, he said. Not just in appearance, but in presence. Like it knew what it was doing. Like it was curious. Like it was testing him. That moment, rifle raised, breath held, was the turning point. He realized then he was facing something with consciousness, not just an animal acting on instinct, but a being making decisions, and maybe letting him live. From denial to truth. Mike admitted that before that day, he thought Bigfoot was a myth, a story, a joke. Something from California, he said, not something that belonged in Louisiana. But reality doesn't ask for permission, and when it showed up, it didn't care what Mike believed. It just stared.
Grizzled old woodsman named Bauman, who tells a tale of going into a secluded valley to trap beavers and other animals with two partners. Only one man got out. They saw a bipedal figure that stank really bad, leaving big footprints, and they shot at it, which is a bad idea. Don't shoot at a Bigfoot. They don't like it.
Years later, the memory of that day still shapes how Mike sees the world. The woods haven't changed, but his understanding of them has. They are not empty, they are not safe, and they are not all ours. And if you ever find yourself face to face with what Mike saw, don't try to fight. Don't try to understand it. Just walk away if you're lucky enough to get the chance. This isn't a fight you can win, Mike warns, the consistency of fear. Each of these encounters, Alaska, Utah, Washington, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Missouri, tells a different story. But the details line up like puzzle pieces. You see the same terrain, untouched wilderness, where man rarely walks and nature still rules. Places far from highways, where even hunters feel out of place. You hear the same things, rhythmic wood knocks that echo across valleys, deep guttural growls that no known animal makes, whistles, clear, coordinated, intentional, not random, not accidental. And you feel the same things, a pressure in the air. The sense that something is just outside your vision, watching, choosing whether to show itself. It's not fear of being lost, it's fear of being found. These creatures don't just appear, they present themselves, always with intelligence, always in control. In every story, from Mike Wooley's terrifying sprint to his truck, to the campers in Washington who found massive footprints around their tents, to the teens at Table Rock Lake who ran from a scream that sounded almost human. It's never a chaotic encounter. It's a message. They could get closer, but they don't. They could make contact, but they don't. They want you to know they're there, but they want you to leave. And when you do, they let you, but not without a scar. What haunts these witnesses isn't just what they saw. It's the moment after. The silence that follows the roar. The eyes that stare back through the trees, the realization that you were allowed to leave. Mike Wooley never forgot the way that face looked. Not angry, not wild, just aware. Like it was measuring him, like it had seen this before. And the others, they described the same look. Intelligence, recognition, a level of presence that no animal has. It's not the kind of thing you can explain to someone who wasn't there. Not with science, not with logic. But when you've lived it, you know. You can't unsee it. You can't laugh it off. You carry it forever. And sometimes, the scariest part isn't what chased you. It's that you never really understood why it let you go. Mike Wooley didn't set out to find Bigfoot. He wasn't chasing fame or headlines. He went hunting. And something else found him. What he brought back wasn't a blurry photo or a piece of fur. It was a story, sharp, clear, terrifying, and unforgettable. In his words, in his voice, in the thousands of tiny remembered details, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Bigfoot is real, and it's watching.